Good evening. I'm Sydney Nicole for any new viewers, but today on APTV, we're going to go back in time to Western Africa in 1100 through 1500 CE. We're going to be meeting some special guests today, people from the Ghana, Mali, and the Songhai Empire. So everybody give a round of applause for Olivia Keene representing the different empires of West Africa in the sub-Saharan trade. Please welcome Ms. Keene.
The first empire to start trading in Western Africa was the Ghana Empire, formerly known as the Ouagadougou Empire. Located between the Sahara and the Niger River, the Ghana Empire lasted from 700 to 1100 CE. They traded ivory, gold, and slaves between Africa and Europe. The religion of Islam was brought in through trade.
So what about the Mali Empire? How did they end up in control?
Well, the Mali Empire was founded by Soudiata Keita and took control in 1235 by uniting the tribes of the Mandinka people. Mali was famous for its salt trade. Salt was so valuable that people would trade a pound of gold for a pound of salt. Mali started to lose control around 14 CE and then finally fell in 16 CE.
I wish a king like that would give me some money, but what's the Songhai Empire?
Suni Ali Bear took control as the first great ruler of Songhai. Him being a military commander allowed him to be able to enlarge the empire, take control over important trade routes, and also cities in Mali. The Songhai Empire became the largest state in African history when it was at its highest.
Wow, that's amazing. But that's all we have time for, Ms. Keene. I thank you for being a great guest on our show.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And for the fans out there in the crowd, we have another guest joining us today, Ms. Stokes. She's coming to talk about the Europeans and the early slave trade. So give it up for Ms. Stokes.
Hello, thanks for having me.
What will you be informing us with today?
I'll be discussing about the Europeans and the early slave trade in Western Africa. When people hear about slavery, they automatically think about whites buying and selling blacks for their own purposes. Even though that is true, back in the early 1500s, Europeans and Africans sold their own people and shipped them to the Americas across the Atlantic Ocean. They mostly sold criminals and prisoners in Gao and Timbuktu.
How could they do that to their own people?
I know, right? Europeans also relied on African merchants, soldiers, and rulers to provide slaves for them. Europeans purchased large amounts of Africans. I remember my great-great-grandmother telling me about how Luo Africanus traveled to West Africa and recorded in his book the descriptions of Africa and the notable things therein contained. And in this book, he wrote, "Slaves are the next highest commodity in the marketplace." That's the time they lived in where people were being sold like gold and spices.
Wow, that hurts to hear. Nowadays, people complain about not ordering the newest shoes, but those slaves had no say in what they wanted to do. Thank you for the quality information, Ms. Stokes.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have a very special guest, Mansa Musa, all the way from Mali. Hello, Mansa. Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you mind giving us a little background information?
Of course not. My name is Mansa I of Mali, also known as the King of Kings Musa. I also go by the richest person in history. I was born in 1307 CE and died in 1332 CE. After Mali became the most dominant state in sub-Saharan Africa after Ghana, I became the 10th ruler, not to mention the most famous. During my reign, Mali became one of the biggest empires in the world.
Wow, that's very impressive, but what exactly makes you famous?
Most of my fame can probably be attributed to my wealth and my Hajj.
Your Hajj?
Yes, my trip to the birthplace of Muhammad. the holiest city in Islam, Mecca. Any able-bodied Muslim should make the trip.
If all Muslims are supposed to make this trip, what makes your trip so special?
I went on my journey to Mecca in 1324, 17 years into my reign, with a caravan of 60,000 men and 12,000 slaves. All 80 of my camels carried 30 pounds of gold. On my journey, I distributed gold to the people. It turns out, actually, I gave out so much of my gold that it became worthless in the economies of cities that I visited. However, I heard that the citizens still sang my praises even 12 years after I had visited them.
Which cities did you visit?
I stopped in Cairo, Gao, and Timbuktu.
Oh, Timbuktu. I was going to ask you about that next. Is there anything you can tell me about that infamous city?
Of course, I love my visit in Timbuktu. It is located on a northern bend in the Niger River near the Sahara. It became the most important trading post near the Niger River and a center for Islamic culture. The greatest university of Sankore and the Jaz'Monet Mosque were built in Timbuktu. It eventually became integrated into the Mali Empire.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Welcome our next guest, Ms. Kane. Hello, Ms. Kane. How are you today?
Good. How about you?
I'm great, thank you. So I hear you're going to be telling us about this drastic influence Muslim culture had on African traditions.
Yes, I am. Where should I start? Trade is a big part of African culture because since there was trade, there was the spread of Islam. That's a big deal. Islam is the second most practiced religion in the sub-Saharan Africa.
What other ways did Islam impact African culture?
Mansa Musa, who was just with you earlier, brought an architect named Sahili to Africa with his Hajj. And Africa was very influenced by his building style. Africa was also very influenced by Islamic writing and new techniques of weighing items.
It's crazy how different cultures are influenced by different cultures. But I enjoyed your time here today.
Thank you.
So that's all we have for today. This was Sydney Nicole. Tune in next time on APTV.
Europeans and Africans sold their own people and shipped them to the America across the Atlantic Ocean.
Across the America.
Everybody like, I hate myself.
I know.
No, I'm so sorry.
Oh.